All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the only nationally syndicated show all about the information economy. It's called Inside Analysis. Your host, Eric Kavanaugh, here. Very excited to kick off 2025 with world renowned influencer analyst and all around cool guy, Jim Harris. Look him up on jimharris.com, just like it sounds. We're at CES all week and we're talking to lots of really cool companies like WePower and MyTrust and a whole bunch of other folks. And we're going to get a handle on what's going on out there in the world of consumer technology. And Jim, there is no shortage of cool stuff to talk about, but there are some caveats, of course. This era of open data and sharing data, it's great stuff. We can learn a lot about each other, what's going on, but some things maybe we want to keep private. And there's a story in the news today about a car company that had a breach and all kinds of data got out, and lots of people are very unhappy about that. In the connected cars world, if you can tap into someone's information system, you can find a way to get their information, and that is a big problem for many companies. So privacy is still an issue. Security is always going to be an issue. Anytime you're connected to the internet, you're connected to all the good guys and all the bad guys. The IoT world, as they call it, Internet of Things. Of course, there's also the IIoT, the Industrial Internet of Things. We'll talk about that at some point, I'm sure. But Jim, first of all, great stuff is happening, but some caveats. What are your thoughts going into CES 2025?
Well, it is such an exciting show. There'll probably be 150,000 people there, Eric. There are going to be thousands of companies exhibiting, great keynotes, all sorts of panel discussions. I'm chairing a panel on AI and predictive AI. So it is just an incredible conference. It's every year in January in Las Vegas, and it's the most influential tech show in the world. So we're going to see a lot of exciting things, a lot of really interesting discussions. And last year, the number one trending topic was AI. And it is AI again on Twitter in advance, now called X. But this year, there's a slight twist to it. The number one trending topic for CEOs in advance of the conference is agentic AI.
Oh, sure.
So we'll talk about that in the show. So a little teaser, agentic AI.
Yeah, and just to explain to our audience what Jim is talking about are AI agents. And these are little semi-autonomous applications that can do all kinds of different things. It's not just traditional automation where you will tell a computer do this set of processes whenever this happens. That's standard automation. It's been around for decades, quite frankly. But AI agents are very, very interesting little buggers because they can reconcile, they can make different decisions based on dynamic and fluid situations. Now, what I've heard, and I'd be curious to know what you've heard, is that by and large, AI agents are designed to do one thing very well, whether that's grab data, analyze data, deliver data, process data, run some algorithm, figure something out. But some people are suggesting AI agents could be more versatile. And the most compelling story I've heard out of companies like Verint, for example, we were talking about our buddy Tom Augenthaler, he works with Verint. Their CEO told me that they like to have these agents that are very purpose built and specific. But there are other companies now, and one of them I think of is Mistral, which is one of the new large language models. They have this mixture of experts process where they have an orchestrator that kind of sits on top of the agents. So just like a manager with a bunch of direct reports, that's how these multi-layered AI agent architectures work. And that is pretty cool stuff. So the little orchestrator sits there and goes, okay, Bob, you do this. Sue, you now do that. Fred, you do this. And that's their job, is to orchestrate, which is basically what Kubernetes does from Google for a systems use case, which is fascinating stuff. I mean, Kubernetes is absolutely amazing. But I think this orchestration layer is going to be really important for AI agents. What do you think?
Absolutely. And we often think about AI as a single entity, but here you're talking about AI as a
Hmm.
team of skilled agents, AI agents. And so let's take, for instance, accounts receivable, accounts payable. every year in a large company, there are thousands upon thousands of conflicts that exist. Like we invoiced you for this $10,000 and you only paid us $9,950. And there's a difference in this. Well, historically, a person had to get involved in all this. Well, imagine agent to agent, account payable to account receivable, discuss it and say, well, we actually, when we received the shipment, there was one broken piece which was worth $50. Uh, so these agents go back into their ERPs, their respective
Mhm.
systems, and say, oh, the shipping manifest at the shipping dock shows one broken thing, which was worth $50. That's why we're
Right.
paying you $50 less. And it
Right.
goes, oh, yeah, okay, I'll accept that. And boom, that ARAP dispute is closed with no human getting involved. And
Yeah.
the two humans on either side of this transaction to get involved would probably cost $300 of person time. So we've actually solved a $50 dispute with two agents, AI agents, at basically next to nothing in cost.
Yeah.
So, how can we take 80% of the disputes in ARAP and solve them?
Yeah, that is an excellent use case for lots of different reasons. One, it's a task that these AI agents can do very well. It's a fairly simple thing. It's fairly easy to understand. There's a discrepancy between this number and that number. Where did it come from? And of course, these agents and the new IT world in general operates on what are called declarative programs or declarative functionality, where instead of the old way of doing computing with imperative programming where you tell the computer line by line what to do, with declarative you declare an objective that you want accomplished and you let the system figure it out on its own. It's really fascinating stuff. Kubernetes is declarative. A lot of these new models are declarative. And so it's a good way to just get what you want done without having to micromanage the computer. That's really what it boils down to, is it's not micromanaging the computer. So this is great stuff because the agents can go back and forth. They go, "Dit, dit, dit, dit. Oh, okay, no, we got it." And then they'll give some report on that. And then a human will go once a day or once an hour and look at all the different things that have been resolved and just make sure that they're correct. And then throw in some curation, throw in some commentary. And of course, they're not always going to be right, but people aren't always right either. So all we really want for these things to do is get to where they're good enough or better than people at doing things and much more efficient. And besides, what a dreadful job for a human to do, right? I mean, who wants to do that all day? Nobody does.
I remember that my accountants, for instance, feel they need to balance to the penny, right? And you're paying your accountant 300 bucks an hour to find three pennies that's not balanced, and it drives me crazy. So how can we just say, okay, well, we're pretty close. Uh, I guess the principle is underneath it. Well, maybe there's two transactions that are skewed that are 3 cents off and are really highlighting a problem. But I think to your point, we're going to end up automating things that are dull, dirty, and dangerous. So
Mm,
anything that's a really repetitive task will get automated by agentic AI. And
mhm.
people worry about job loss, but there are 2 million job openings right now in the US healthcare system.
Hmm.
2 million job openings, and it's estimated there's about $300 billion of waste and inefficiency in the US healthcare system. So, agentic AI could really help improve the efficiency of the healthcare system and address this 2 million gap of people that we can't find to fill US healthcare jobs.
Yeah, and we're going to go through a very tumultuous and disruptive period of time, but for those who have their sea legs under them, it should be a bit of a fun and challenging time. I think the key piece of advice I'd give to anyone in the working world who wants to keep going out there and doing cool things, start using these technologies. Use Gen AI, understand it's not perfect, but learn the ins and outs of these systems. And Gen AI, of course, is just one facet of AI, and it's very interesting. It does cool stuff. There are many other facets of AI. Traditional, or as I call it, old-fashioned AI is still out there doing cool things where you build models to do predictions. There's a company I interviewed not recently called SafeBooks AI, which is doing really interesting stuff in the accounting space you're talking about. And they can help companies avoid major problems like at Macy's, where this big chunk of money was not reported as an expense, causing their accountants lots of trouble and causing a lot of trouble across the company. That kind of thing will be found by AI. And I think we should also spin into the whole world of manufacturing and how automation and even AI is coming into play there. And you brought up the stat that I saw Alvin Fu mention the other day, which is that China is now dominating the automotive industry, not just the EV space, which they are, they're number one in electric vehicles. They are crushing it in terms of being able to export cars. They're number one in the world. The US stinks compared to them these days. It's almost unbelievable, but you have to look at the charts to see it, right?
So for 44 years, Japan was the number one exporter of cars in the world. And then China began focusing on production capacity and EVs. And in 2023, it became the largest exporter of cars globally, just blowing past everyone else, Japan, Mexico, Germany, South Korea, and the US. And part of it is the focus on electric vehicles called EVs. 76% of all EVs in the world are produced in China. It has just doubled down on this. And so while Europe and the US are, I don't know about EVs, China is all in on it. And this
Wow.
is in part leading to their domination globally. And what we're seeing is a discussion of tariffs in response. Tariffs are one of the items that Trump has been talking about pretty prevalently, putting 100% tariffs on imported Chinese cars. And so wherever there's a domestic auto industry, you're seeing governments talk about tariffs. But for instance, in Australia, there's no domestic auto industry. So what is the benefit for them? They get inexpensive cars, like
Right.
cars.
Right.
So there's no protectionism in any country that doesn't have its own auto industry. So
That's right.
China is going to end up dominating global trade with every country that doesn't have a domestic auto industry.
Right.
Right? Until finally, and then you're seeing news like Honda announcing it's going to merge with Nissan and Mitsubishi.
I
So
saw that.
that's three Japanese car companies who are being crushed by the growth of Chinese EVs. There have been Japanese car companies very slow to shift to EVs. So they're getting crushed.
Yeah,
And
and this
their solution to merge.
right. And these days, speaking of technology and data and analytics and ERPs and things of this nature, it is a lot easier, thanks to AI and machine learning and automation, to pull off mergers and acquisitions. And that, therefore, I predict we will see more of these coming down the pike because it's much easier now to get an analysis, a real brass tacks look at what our assets are, how do they align with the assets of this company or that company, and you can get a real clear view because, hitherto you were just kind of guessing. I mean, you're guessing on the personnel side, on the manufacturing side, and all kinds of things, and hoping it's going to work out. And it could take years to really make that acquisition or that merger gel. That's not going to be the case in the future, as I see many organizations are going to do what you just commented on. They're going to merge to stay alive. We're, like I say, we're going to go through a very tumultuous period here, but for the agile, I think it's going to be a win-win. What do you think?
I'd agree. I think I made a prediction that we're going to see half of the traditional car companies, legacy automakers of gas cars, disappear. over the next 10 years. They're going to either go bankrupt, they're going to merge, as in the case of Honda, Nissan, and Mitsubishi. There you have three car companies combining into one. You've lost two car companies. So we're going to see a shrinking of the legacy auto industry. And this next stat is shocking to me, Eric, but Tesla right now, today, is worth more than the rest of the auto industry added together. I mean,
It's
that
amazing.
that blows me away. If you don't think electrification is going to change the 10 trillion a year transportation and logistics market, that stat's for you. Half the value of the industry.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it goes back to innovation and to doing things in new ways. I attended the Reuters Next conference. I guess it was 2 Novembers ago. I spoke last November, and 2 Novembers ago, I attended, and a girl from Reuters was interviewing the, Alex P. Morgan, I think his name is. He's the CEO of JP Morgan or one of these companies. I think that was Gorman was his name. Very, very smart guy, and she's hounding him basically trying to get him to admit that they made a bad bet on Twitter because they threw some money in to help him buy Twitter. And he just he shook his head for a couple of seconds and then he said, "We're not stupid." I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, what an answer. He goes, anyone who doubts Elon Musk should go visit a Tesla factory and then you'll understand. Because these folks thought through the entire end to end process and they re envisioned everything. And that's why they're able to achieve these amazing numbers. And that's what innovation takes. It takes unlearning your biases and then relearning something new. And that I think is going to be a hallmark of success in 2025. Final thoughts from you.
Well, I love that Tesla is vertically integrated. In other words, it makes the engines, it makes the chassis, it makes the batteries, it makes the wheels, it makes the seats. And therefore, to your point, it can control the production process from end to end and drive efficiencies out of it. Legacy auto, no, they have thousands of suppliers. And so to actually change is very hard since there isn't that vertical integration. So I agree with you absolutely. We're going to see big changes in the auto industry, in basically every industry with AI and automation.
Yeah, and retail, we'll see a lot of cool retail stuff, healthcare, of course, financial services. The pinch is everywhere, folks. Well, send me an email if you want to be on this show, info@insideanalysis.com. That comes right to me. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis. All right, folks, back here on Inside Analysis, and I'm so excited today as part of our CES preview to get a newbie, a guy who is not new to media, he's not new to technology, he's not new to sports and fitness or interviews or tech or understanding what's going on in the real world out there. None other than John Meyer of the podcast bearing his name, and we're pretty excited. He's a fellow Pennsylvanian, and John here in Pittsburgh. They call folks Yinzers or like Yins. Hey, Yins, you guys. And I was like, Yins, what on earth is Yins? What are they talking about? I have a theory on that, which I throw at Pennsylvanians, and they like it because if you're from Pennsylvania, you're a Pennsylvanian, right? So multiple Pennsylvanians, Yins. It's at the end of the word. That's my theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but hey, you're on the other side of the state. I don't hold that against you. Eagles fan, tough team. Steelers, we're usually a tough team. Had a bad few games lately. But tell me a bit about your passion for sports and fitness and where that dovetails with technology, like wearables and all that kind of fun stuff.
Eric, thank you for inviting me onto the show. As you mentioned, John Meyer from Meyer Media, also the John Meyer podcast. I've got a theory now that you mentioned for your yins. It could be
Ah,
going along with Yingling Beer and Brewery. Just saying, I'm sure you're familiar with it.
someone else said that too. So yins, yings, yins, yings, ying. I could see after a few yings and yins, it starts to slur a little bit, but that's okay.
After a few Yinglings, it will slur just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, Eric, my huge passion is around media, content, and creating. As you mentioned, I am a noob to CES. It's the first one. We've been accepted as media, joining totally overwhelming right now. I mean, I've been to Vegas so many times, but coming to this event, I just realized this is the Super Bowl event of technology for consumers. You mentioned fitness and everything. Obviously, huge Eagles fan, die hard. Don't hold it against you on the other side of the state. I'm actually hoping for maybe a PA Bowl would be really cool to
Yes. Wouldn't
watch.
that be great?
That would be the first time in history, and yeah,
Yes.
obviously, I'm rooting for that, and I'll root for the Eagles to win, but hey, we'll have a good time and they're going down Broad Street. We'll definitely see some of the Steelers fans.
Yeah.
Talking about fitness, been in fitness all my life. Started out at a very young age, and it's a natural thing to do. Some of the technology that's out there to track it. I saw some of the things that are going to be happening at CES, the wearables, not only the headsets, but the gear, the recovery stuff, the massage, everything around that. Just looking at how to improve my game, but also recover from injuries or from workouts much faster.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I talked with someone else just today about the wearables, and here's what excites me about that stuff is the data that you can capture for individual health, for population health, to understand how is the workout affecting you, what is good for you to eat, what's not good for you. I mean, I think hitherto most healthcare has been boiled down to very generic basics. I mean, they take your vitals, your heart rate, your temperature, stuff like that. Okay, that's useful. But when you can start absorbing massive amounts of data about how your body acts when you sleep, when you run, when you walk, when you're sitting, all these different things, I think we're at the beginning of a fascinating age in which we can get a much better understanding of ourselves, how we sleep, and how to improve our lives every day, how to improve our health. What do they say? If you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? So I think that in sports, of course, you have to be very fit, and so in that world, it's a whole other level of intensity and practice and work. And you want to know what's working, what's not working. I think we're at the beginning of a golden age because of that. What do you think?
Eric, you actually just touched on a bunch of things because that actually crosses over into healthcare. If you think about it, you talked about going into a doctor and they just take your simple vitals, your heart rate, your blood pressure. But how would you love to walk in there with all the data and say, "Hey, listen,
Right.
here's what I got from my fitness. Here's what I got from all mine," and they're like, wow, I wish we had this. Now you can present them, problems are easily solved. You can avoid injury, you can avoid long-term illness. There's so many things that you can understand as a person to do much better so you actually avoid the doctor.
Right. That's right. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, baby. I'm all for that. And I remember, so I'm originally from Chicago, so I was a huge Michael Jordan fan, and the guy was just a machine. I mean, honest to goodness, he's just easily top players of all time, and he would stretch before every game. I think it was like an hour or so. He would take the time to stretch, and because of that, and maybe because of his physique, he was rarely injured. You didn't see that guy get injured very often at all because he took care of himself. And see, I think again with wearables, you're going to have you need software too to analyze the data and understand what it all means, because telemetry data, when you look at it, the raw data, it's like ones and zeros and
Yep.
very incomprehensible stuff. But in a certain application, you can kind of start to understand, huh, that's interesting, and compare yourself to other people your size, your weight, your height, whatever. The more we can understand how our body is responding to the world and to what we eat, the foods we eat, how much we drink, what we drink, I think it's going to really change and give a lot more awareness and power to individual people to live better lives. What do you think?
Eric, the wearables, I saw one on there for you're wearing a pair of pants, right? And it had all the RFID and all the telemetry, all the data being pulled from it's almost like the stuff like the copper stuff you wear, but here you put it on and you can actually start to read your body and the
Right.
metrics as they're happening on your body, your muscles, where they're tightening, where they're not working, where you're performing, where you're not. You're at the gym and you do something, you're actually doing an exercise. And if you do it incorrectly, you're going to get hurt at some point, not all the
Right.
time right away. This can tell you how well you're doing immediately while you're doing it. You can read all this data efficiently right on your phone while you're at the gym. Be like, oh man, I need to stop running now. Normally you like run and you do 30 minutes of cardio. Well, this is already reading immediately what's happening to you and be like, hey, listen, you need to, shut it down and go into a soft mode so that you don't injure yourself.
Right. No, that's right. Feedback. I mean, everyone loves a feedback loop, whether that's from your colleagues or friends or your boss say, hey, good job, or okay, maybe better next time. Whatever it is, it helps to have feedback. And now we have digital feedback about what's really happening in our lives. I came up with this concept a few years ago about big data. and I talk about something I call real world data at scale. And that's where we are these days. You can capture the data, you can analyze the data, process the data. Think population health. In San Antonio, they have one of the highest heart attack rates. Well, why is that? It's probably because of all the food and it's high fat, for example. You don't really know that. But I think, like I say, until now, we've kind of been guessing for a lot of stuff. And now we're going to be able to test and validate and understand from the data itself how this affects us, how this makes me feel better, what doesn't. Like when I'm feeling down, why is that? We're going to have a lot more information. And to me, that's just supercharging this life. What do
Eric,
you
when
think?
you talk about feedback, think about the feedback that you receive from colleagues, right? Constructive criticism. It's very tough for a lot of people to take and to receive. But if you have a device telling you 100% honest, this is what's going on and this is what's happening, you're more apt to believe it and adjust to it rather than somebody telling you you might take a while till you adjust or until you experience the injury. I'm like, I should have listened to them. Here, you listened immediately.
That's funny. Well, another one of my fun lines is machines don't lie. Right? I mean, machines are just saying what's on the information that they're giving. They're just giving it back
Yep.
to you. And even simple things like your steps or your screen time or whatever it is, it's like if you take a minute to look at that, you'll realize how your behavior is day to day, and then you can start to improve things. And people want to improve. Like, let's say you want to lose some weight. Well, you can weigh yourself every day, and that helps, but it's just once a day, right? Or maybe twice a day or something. But to have this constant feed giving you information and giving you insights and giving you a nudge, perhaps. I mean, you're starting to see some of that in the tech world too. Like, hey, it's starting to get late. Maybe you should go to bed. I mean, personally, I don't like the school marm apps on my phone, but I do understand it's good to get feedback and to understand what's happening, right?
Yep. I'm definitely looking forward to not only the sports, the fitness, the wearables, just the information, the things that I can do to not improve my personal fitness in life, but see what's out there.
Hmm. Well, and CES, I mean, I've only been to one last year and it's just massive. I mean, it's so big that they don't just fill up the exhibit halls, they fill up the Venetian. Lots of companies will rent hotel rooms for demos and things of that nature. So it's just like five convention centers strung
Yep.
together. You're talking like 150,000 people gathering. And there's a lot to learn. I mean, I try to keep an open mind every day and learn about new technologies. And we are in an era where because of AI to a certain extent, we're able to do things that we were not able to do before. We're able to optimize things, right? We can crunch the numbers and understand, again, like with media, what do people want to watch? What do they not want to watch? Now, I will say I have some pet peeves with software as a service and some of the data we get from these engines. In fact, we're going to do a show next year called Lies, Damn Lies, and SaaS Statistics because it's all about like, all right, is this real? What are you talking about? You throw some money at YouTube or LinkedIn or Google, like, oh, well, look at all these impressions you got. Did I? Like, who are these people? Are you sure? Like, you have new subscribers. Do I really?
Yeah, yeah. Are they real? Let's just put it that way. Or they're a new one, but then they're not there anymore. It's a dummy account.
You have to wonder. I mean, I'll
Yep.
just give you a stat. The other day I saw because I threw some money at some of these YouTube videos, and there were 261 views. And they look at the demographics, and every last one of them was a male over the age of 65. Now, when you have like 11 strata of years, like 11 to 15, I can't remember what they were, and then the last one is 65 plus, and I got 261 viewers. You're going to tell me every last one of these viewers, what did I go viral in an old folks home somewhere? Like, what the hell's going on here? I don't think that's real. So I do think there is a bit of a hedge on the excitement around the data because we need transparency.
Yep.
That's one of my mantras is, the more transparency we get, the better, because if we can all see what's really happening, then we can all improve it. What do you think about that?
I agree. And you got 261 views, but you probably got 211 likes. And you're like, okay, is that really possible that these people all liked my video? Because I'll tell you what, when I go and watch a video, I try to do that, but I don't do that all the time. So,
Right. Yeah, when I saw one the other day where it's like they gave a keynote, and at first it was like 20, 30, 40, and then over like 2 weeks it was 10,000 views and zero likes and no No, I'm sorry, it wasn't zero. There was zero comments and just like 12 likes or something. I'm like, 10,000 people really watch this and no one commented? It was pretty forward-looking stuff. I basically said that before too long, AI is going to take over the judicial system, at least for civil cases. I think you're going to be able to just upload your case into a folder. The defense uploads their case into the folder. You do an interview on camera to an AI engine, a chat bot, and then it goes, all right, brrr, ding, guilty, pay him $5,000 next. And like no one commented on that. Like,
Wow, wow. I can see a lot of comments on that. It'll definitely clear a backlog, but I think it will also
right.
create some friction.
My theory is that people will have a harder time lying to a cold computer camera than to a person. That's my theory. I think it's going to be hard. I don't know why I think that, but something tells me it's like, oh, because the other side of AI is that these models are getting so good, they can tell like your behavior, like is he acting shifty? I mean, there are little tells you can learn just from experience, like, when you ask a hard question, someone looks down and blinks as they talk. Well, they probably did something wrong, or they're probably not being straight with you. And
Yep.
these algorithms are going to pick that stuff up. I mean, that's, I guess, the last question I'll throw at you is, as we face this world, this AI overthrow, as I call it, because it's going to be everywhere. It's already everywhere. It's going to be in every major cloud-based application that you use. There's going to be some aspect, whether under the covers or right there on the surface. What are your thoughts about this changing dynamic and how we as humans can remain in charge?
I think one of the things about remaining in charge for AI is validating it and always having a governance around it. Not AI governing AI, because that's like the government governing the government. It just doesn't work in a
Right.
thing, because I think for us with AI, let's touch a little bit on the audio and video stuff that are happening at CES, and AI is a huge part of that. Now, a lot of the videos that are created today, some of the stuff is spoofed from video, from AI generating on it. How do you tell the difference?
Right.
I think there needs to be a governance around it in order a tag or something within the video, even if it's remade, recaptured, whatever screenshot. There needs to be a way to tag that is AI generated in order
Hmm.
for us to understand what deep fake is and what is happening out there. But I also believe there's so many positives for AI and around video and audio, because it has helped us in our business nowadays be more efficient, not only creating the video, but fine tuning it, editing it, and cleaning up some of the stuff. So circling back to your question, I just think there needs to be a way that we got to put something in place to monitor what we're creating from AI and to validate it, whether it is using a third party AI to validate that that is happening, because not a
Hmm.
human, it's tough for a human to understand that that's AI generated in some cases.
Right. I think you're right. And I'm sure some smart people are working on this right now. My theory is that you can do a number of different things. One, you can use the metadata that is baked into cameras, for example. When you take a picture with all these new iPhones and Samsungs, there's metadata layer that captures where you were at the time, what time you took this thing. All this information is captured in the video. So to be able to capture that and say, aha, this is a clean video, this has not been edited, this has not been doctored. I think that's the key, and probably QR codes too, like a watermark of some kind of QR code. But I think you're right. We do need to have some governance around this, because otherwise, evidence even in courts is going to be out the window. But folks, look this gentleman up online, John Meyer. That's Meyer, the John Meyer Podcast. Look forward to seeing you at CES. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis. All right, folks, welcome back to Inside Analysis in our CES preview for 2025. And folks, I'm super excited to have a fellow Yinzer, a fellow Pennsylvanian on the call here today, Dr. Frank Vigiano. What's new, Doc? That's his brand. That's what he talks about. He has been a judge at CES for a very long time now and has been focused on the healthcare industry for years and years, and is a regular TV and radio personality. So I got to ask you, Frank, what's new, Doc?
So much. With CES, I mean, I've been going for, it'll be believe it or not, my 57th year attending CES. So they started in New York City. Oh yeah, I'll send you a clip. What
That's
was
amazing.
interesting is that CBS in Las Vegas did a special. When I arrived there 7 years ago, my badge said 50 years and had a special ribbon. And I saw, oh, this is great. So we started, networking with a bunch of different people talking about badges. And I learned that I was only one of two people that have attended every CES since its
Wow.
origination in New York City. Yeah, pretty crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
and as you know, here in Pennsylvania, the number 57 has a certain meaning, right? Heinz 57. So it's all coming full circle now. What do
Oh
you
yeah.
see? What excites you about CES 2025?
Well, there's so many new technologies. I think it's branched out into you. We talked a little earlier about healthcare, and that's a real big important category. People are finding they're wearing rings, they're wearing watches, they're wearing their wearables to give them insight into their body and what's happening. And there's more and more apps being created. So that's a big growth area for CES. And you still have the standards, television, appliances. I mean, it's all still there, but these other new categories, for example, in the automotive section, a lot of these manufacturers are exhibiting now at CES where they, had never done so before. And the reason being is that they had Detroit. So when the pandemic came, everything stopped and nobody went to the Detroit show because they canceled it. They had to, they had no choice. So because of that and kind of the combination of CES growing and inviting more automobile manufacturers to exhibit there, they had a whole area in the North Hall where the majority of it was all automobiles, different things too, lidar, radar, sensors, all different technology, and the vehicles themselves.
Mhm. You know what really excites me because I'm a data guy. I focus on data, artificial intelligence, big data, leveraging data, telemetry. We have all this data these days, and we
Mhm.
now have the compute capacity and the algorithms to analyze data at scale and really understand what's going on. So when I
Yeah.
think about population health or even individual health care, a few years ago, you had a few things. They take your vitals, they can do blood draws, they can look at you through different lenses. But still, for
Mhm.
those who have paid attention, it's a relatively opaque window. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's translucent a little bit, but it's you really have to know what you're doing to figure out what these scores mean on blood tests and things of this nature. But now, if you have one of these wearables and it's keeping track of your pulse, of your blood pressure, of your steps, of just everything about you, what you're doing. I
Yeah.
have to believe that in the near future, if not already, we're going to have tremendously improved capabilities to understand what is my health? What are my problems? What are because once you understand leading indicators, you can start watching for things like diabetes, for example, or respiratory problems or whatever. And I think we're
Mhm.
going to enter an age, and as long as we can hack through HIPAA regulations and security and compliance and all the concerns about those things, I think we're going to enter an absolutely golden era of personal healthcare and population health. What do you think?
No, I agree with you totally, absolutely. And it's being welcomed. I think initially, for example, um, when LiDAR came out and some of the technologies for automobiles, the biggest concern from consumers was, oh, it's recording me while I'm driving. This is
Right.
recorded. And many things do not record. The only thing they do is they process the data. For example, if I'm driving and I'm sleepy and I start to drowse a little
Right.
bit, do this,
Right.
it senses that I'm not awake and I'm not driving the vehicle, or at least be paying attention to the vehicle as it's moving. So therefore, that's going to create all kind of issues. It's going to slow that car down. It could even bring it to a stop until I, wake up and say, "Oh no, I'm here. I've got the steering wheel in my hand." That type of thing. So I think what's important is that the fear that people have of their privacy. And
Yeah.
honestly, Eric, there is no more privacy.
Yeah. Well, I hosted a stage at the Data Universe conference in New York back in April, and they had me host the privacy stage. And the first thing I said is, privacy is dead. Like, forget about it. I mean, not that we shouldn't aspire towards respecting privacy. I think that's still a
Of
very
course.
worthwhile goal. Yes, big companies want to protect your sensitive data, but to think that your data is not everywhere is just a naive perspective, it seems to me, right?
Oh, really? I mean, if you have a cell phone, really? Are you kidding me? They know where you are every minute of every second,
Right.
regardless of where you go.
Right. That's right. So and sharing data is valuable. I mean, especially in the healthcare space, again, with all these devices, now you have to normalize the data, you have to attend to lapses in data. That's one of the issues with IoT, right? Is that you do have lapses of telemetry. You have to watch out for that and model for that. But nonetheless, I mean, I think at some significant scale, and I'm sure universities are working on this and major manufacturers are looking into
Mhm.
this, there is just an absolute treasure trove of information that we can now finally access and analyze to figure out
Absolutely.
what are the behavioral patterns that lead
Yeah,
to
yeah.
better health, right?
Well, yeah, a good example too would be a device, let's say, that would send a message to a physician and they're monitoring in a certain, let's say, a certain part of the body for a certain reason. And here's an alert that comes over this, oh my goodness, this is like we got to take care of this immediately. When it saves someone's life and that information is shared with others, that's huge. So people don't worry anymore about privacy because guess what? It
Right.
superseded what's needed to save a life. I mean, how could you how could you be upset with that?
Well, and I'll make an analogy here to maintenance of machines like trains and on automobiles and things of this nature. We've had predictive analytics in the industries where they could afford it 30 years ago, even possibly 40 years ago, like in aeronautics, for example, with
Mhm.
airplanes. And what they've learned is that if you capture all the data, the sensor data, you could tell, hey, if this part breaks, that part's going to break shortly thereafter. So you sense and wait for this
Right.
part to reach a certain threshold, and I was fascinated to learn that sound is a big part of that whole game because when they start squeaking, they make little sounds like a timing belt making a sound like, we got a problem here. You have to address it. Well, if you think about how that changes the attitude of the person monitoring this information beforehand, the guy on the train would just have to go check every door, look at every wheel, and you're never ever going to find, not never, but almost never going to find anything. But if you're acting on data from the system that's telling you a problem is coming, then you're
Sure.
attentive and you're focused and you know where to focus your attention. So to me, that is a massive sea change in operational efficiency and
Hmm.
engagement with the user, with the human, right? And
Yeah.
as the old saying goes, what gets measured gets managed. So I think it really changes the game for how people can pay attention. They don't want to pay too much attention, don't want to get all worked up about it, but still to know that you have this problem and have some way of measuring it, that's going to be huge for improving healthcare overall, right?
No question. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, so what are you excited to see at CES? Are you going to
Well, a
be,
couple of things that are interesting. LG's come up with some great technology. I mean, they have for years, but they just launched about a week ago. They teased it at CES 2024, but now they've launched it, and it's the first see-through OLED television.
oh, wow.
You see through it. Now, people say, why? Or what is the so the idea is that many, I think you know that from an interior design perspective, many people say, I don't want that TV in my bedroom. I don't want it in the living room. I don't want to see it sitting out. I don't want it hanging on the wall, whatever. And we understand, we get that. So what LG has done is they've taken an OLED television and you can see right through it. So you put it in the picture window of your home, let's say in front of you have an ocean view, a mountain view. It's incredible. And then what happens, there is a black screen that rolls up when you want to see TV. And when you do that, it blocks the light from going through. And therefore the image is just like it would be if you were watching a regular television. It's an
Wow.
amazing product.
Yeah, it's fun to watch all these innovations, and my goodness, you've seen many of them. Your 57th CES is what
Right.
you're
So they
going to. That's
so when I was on
amazing.
when I was on 7 years ago. Of course, this was big because everybody's like CES 50 years. So they said, Dr. Frank, what was the deal the first CES? What was it all about? And I said, color television. It was in New York
Wow.
City and
Wow.
they showed color TV. That was
Wow.
such a breakthrough. I mean, and I mean, I remember all this. It was like my father, he's the one that really got me into electronics and technology. He was a physician, but he loved tech, loved it. He bought a Hoffman solar radio from Hoffman Electronics in California. I still have it. It was AM, batteries in the back. And I took it. I said, Dad, can I take it to the pool? He said, well, this is not cheap. And, if you take, you better be careful. I said, okay. So, Mr. Magician, I get it to the pool. All my friends are standing around. We're listening to the radio, and I pull the battery out. Everybody's like, what? You know, it's still playing and it's not plugged in. That was solar. Yeah. That was
Wow.
19, let me think what that would be. About 1957.
1957. Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
solar power, you look at, I mean, I wrote it on LinkedIn today about, and we'll look for solutions at CES. What just happened in Puerto Rico? 80% of the power is down now in Puerto Rico. And, we've seen the horrible things happening over in Ukraine where the Russians target
Oh,
the energy infrastructure. And it
terrible.
just tells me we got to get off the grid, man. I mean, the grid is there. It's very powerful. It has served society very, very well. But nonetheless, I mean, I love the push for solar. I love the push for alternative energy forms. And
Yeah,
let's try to focus on that and really incentivize people to get off the grid and just be more sustainable. I mean, that's what sustainability is all about, right? I mean, with
absolutely. Yeah.
the numbers have to
Yeah.
come together and make sense, but nonetheless, CES is the place to find that stuff too, right?
Of course. And the problem is, what I never understood the iPhone. Great phone. Love the technology, love the software. But people, I see them at airports everywhere, tethered to a wall to plug it in to charge it. It's like, hey, this makes no sense. I mean, why can't we just replace a battery? And
Hmm.
Kyocera, by the way, is the only company that I'm aware of currently. They have they have products, a Model 7200, but it is the only phone that I know of that you can replace the battery. So you take the pack off.
I
I mean,
remember I remember being very annoyed about that with the iPhone. And
yeah,
you have to ask yourself, yes, and I just had a guy from Apple on the show moments ago who we were talking about Steve Jobs and his commitment to design being a philosophy. Because there's a great quote I read from him where he said, a lot of people view design as a sort of veneer that you put on at the end of the process of building something. And with us, it's central, it's the beginning. It's everything. Design is form and function combined. And so I
sure.
do respect that and I understand it, but nonetheless, the batteries, man, like to be able to get a new battery because these phones, when they get older, the battery life gets shorter and shorter and shorter and just
Yeah,
gets more annoying. And so let's move in that direction, right?
yeah. Well, the Kyocera, which I like about it, you can, like I said, you can swap the battery. Here's the best part: $350. That's it. Only available through Verizon. But when you and a few young people saw my phone and said, "Wow," because I dropped it, and I said, "Well, you can drop this in 6 feet of water, nothing happens." And the glass on the front, it's got Gorilla Glass, so you can't crack it, you can't scratch it. It's
Wow.
unbelievable. I mean, it's
Wow.
really, yeah. And so, they said $350. I just paid 1350 for an iPhone. I said, well, what the market will bear.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And the cool thing about CES is that it is a showcase. One of the things I learned last year when I went to my first one, so I don't have nearly as many in my history as you do. But one of the cool things I like, I think it was LG, in fact, who were showing me around and all their cool little things. And what they do is they have prototypes that they bring to the conference. And then they'll
Right.
have cameras watching who goes by which object and how long they stay there. So they're using data about how sticky these technologies are to determine which ones to push into production because obviously it's a big risk pushing some prototype into production. You got to spend a whole bunch of money,
Yeah.
get a whole bunch of parts, hire people, all this stuff. So you want to know
Mhm.
what the winners are and what the losers are, or the ones that probably will win. I thought that was a
Mhm.
brilliant strategy, and it just shows a real
Sure.
comprehensive view of the problem space and the opportunities,
Mhm.
right?
Well, that's exactly what they did last year with they called OLED T for transparency. So they had it out. People were like just blown away. Oh my goodness, this is incredible technology. So they got feedback, and here we are a year later, and now you can buy
Wow. I love
it.
that. Well, look this gentleman up online, folks. Dr. Frank Vigiano. Sounds like a good Italian name. Who's from down the road here. I'm up in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. He's down the road in Indiana, Pennsylvania. But what's new, Doc? That's his whole tagline. He's been doing this stuff for a long time. We look forward to seeing you at CES in Las Vegas. Don't touch that dial, folks. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis.